Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Old Hunt, where we are still celebrating 10 years of Bloodborne, playing through version 1.00 of the Japanese release. And at the start of this episode, I figure it's time we put on a change of clothes. These sweaty, rumpled, awful things that we're wearing, not doing it for me anymore, so we're going to change into something a little bit more dainty, I think. And before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about the description. So we have a doll's hat, or the doll's hat. There's no real article, right? Hat of a doll is the item name. And it is, let's see, a hat for a doll that has been abandoned. It appears to be a spare that was used, appears to be a spare used for dress up, right? The idea, like a kid would dress up a doll, right? Is the idea of the Kisekaya there. That which was made with great care and appears to have been carefully maintained, right? Teire sarete ita de aro. So they're inserting some speculation. That de aro is inserting some speculation, or not necessarily speculate, like gathering of information, right? It's not explicit information, it's information that's been gathered. So you gather by looking at this, presumably, that it was crafted with great care and carefully preserved as well. So all of that is like the subject, and it is a thing from which you can get a sense for the previous owner's affection towards the doll. That resembles obsession, and therefore this is slightly warm. And there are a lot of like references flying around here, right? Because we have sore wa henshu ni nite, right? So that resembles obsession. What's that resembles obsession? Presumably, it is the affection towards the doll, right? Because we have this whole prior set of sentences that, this, here's another reference, this, presumably the hat or the article of clothing in question, because I think it's the same, yeah. The description is the same except for the, top line, which specifies what the item is, right? Garb or clothing, gloves, skirt, right? At the top line, that's changing. Everything else is the same. So the article of clothing, which appears to have been made with great care and, carefully maintained, you get a sense for the previous owner's affection towards the doll. So I'm guessing that affection for the doll, which is sort of at the heart of that previous set of lines, is the thing that's being referenced to as being similar to obsession. And then, therefore, this, again, assuming I'm understanding the reference correctly, I think we've switched to the clothing, the article of clothing again, is slightly warm. So there is a physical, tangible warmth to this clothing as a result of the affection that borders on mania, not necessarily mania, it borders on obsession, it could be mania, borders on obsession that the previous owner had towards the doll. That's my interpretation of this Japanese. And the interesting thing here, sore wa henshu ni nite, right, the very first opening phrase of the final line there, we've seen that before. Let me get to the cold bloods. So on the higher level cold blood that we have access to, right? We've got the droplets, and then we've got the thick, the rich cold blood. The thick cold blood here, the very last line, once again, first opening phrase, sore wa henshu ni mo nite, right? It's exactly the same, or there might be ni as opposed to nimo. It's incredibly close if it's not exactly the same. That is a thing that resembles obsession. And I don't entirely know what to make of that, but I do think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that sort of by implication, yeah, there is the difference of a slight change in the particle, right? Sore wa henshu ni nite in the doll set. Sore wa henshu nimo nite in the cold blood case. Very similar idea, I think. And so I think we can sort of get the idea from this wording that the previous owner of this doll, the love and care, the affection that they felt for the doll that we can get a sense for from the care that went into creating and looking after this set of clothing, and even down to making, spares for dress up, that is a sign that this person, if they died, would produce thick, cold blood. So I don't necessarily know, like I said, what to do with that implication, but it is interesting, because I think there is that little bit of a linguistic tie there, that little linguistic connection. So I figured I'd bring that up, and let's change into it now. Get these sweaty clothes off our bodies, replace them with something that may be a little old, but also maybe have been abandoned, but also was made with excellent care. Probably smells better than the sweaty Yharnam set there. And okay, we've got some poison knives. I'm not going to necessarily read those right now. I think scalpel is the literal translation there. It's an interesting decision, but I think it's one that makes it. I'm already talking about the item, and I said I wasn't going to look at it. Listen to me. Can't control these translation impulses or these lore impulses. All right, let's lure this thing over here, because behind him, yep, you can just sort of make out in the fog, there is a gunner. All right, I do not want to get hit by any of that. I want you to get hit by my big attack. Yeah, just like that. Oh, no! Oh, no! What happened? There was a window where the enemy had invincibility. Oh, no. Well, we survived it. We lived to tell the tale. All right, and now this person. Oh, no. I dodged at the wrong time. They're still dead. It's just going to cost me a blood vial now. Maybe it's going to be more likely. Nope. The gunners, I forgot. It was the gunner. The gunners always drop quicksilver bullets. But I think if you're, like, low on damage, I don't know if this is actually true, or if this is just something that I've noticed and my sort of inherent wish for it to be true has made me think that it's the case. But I've noticed that if you fight an enemy and the enemy hurts you so that you're low on HP and it's an enemy that can drop blood vials, I think it makes them a little bit more likely to drop blood vials. But, I think I probably it could be one of the cases where I remember when I get hit and they drop blood vials and I think, oh, thank goodness. And I don't necessarily remember as much when I get hit and I kill them and they drop shining coins and I think, oh, well, they could have dropped blood vials. That's annoying. I don't actually know if it influences the drop rates, but it sure feels like it does. Anyway, that's quite a lot of fighting, but as a result, but not quite a lot actually, it's very little fighting. But the very little fighting we had to do for me to feel safe coming over here and talking to these people, as we're once again getting indications, we've got these little incense burners out here, and the lit window over here, we're getting indications that there are some people on this street living in the Cathedral Ward. Let's see how they're doing.
Oh my, what a queer scent. But I'd take it over the stench of blood and beasts any day. What is it then? I'm off during hunts, and besides, this is no place for ladies. Wouldn't want to drag you down too.
Okay, so there are a few interesting things about this dialogue. This character, who we aren't really going to get to know in this playthrough because we're sending everyone to Iosefka's clinic, is named Ariana. And we know that because if we send her to Erdn Chapel, we get a whole involved storyline or set of storylines that we can engage in with her. But she's just pointed out something that I want us to keep in mind, which I've pointed out in the past, but again, it's nice to get a little bit, because we're getting a slight evolution of it here, getting a little bit more information than we got before, which is, first thing that happens is she notices that we smell strange. Oh my, what a queer scent, right? And you think, okay, well, obviously, we just been fighting. Look, there's still blood on our face, right? We got blood on the hammer. We're a mess, right? It's the night of the hunt. The scents of Yharnam cannot be pleasant. So maybe that's what she's noticing. No, she clarifies, I take it over the stench of blood and beasts any day. So there's something distinct about the way that we smell that sets us aside, that's different from the gore and the violence that we're engaging in. There's something about us, and we've sort of seen this before. It's tied to us being a hunter, where if we talk to the little girl, we get the dialogue where the little girl says, oh, I don't know your voice, but I do know that smell. And we talk to the Erden Chapel dweller, and he says, "Oh, I didn't notice the incense must have masked your scent. You must be a hunter," or something to that effect. I don't remember his exact words. Something to that effect. So something about us being a hunter is also being associated with this weird scent that isn't the scent of blood or the scent of beasts. Something distinct from them. So that's something that is going to be interesting to keep in mind. People can sense something's a little bit weird about us. Also, it's just interesting to me the way that they convey some information about what sort of place this is, right? They get across the idea that Ariana is a sex worker in both languages by using hints. You come and she says, "I'm off during hunts." And then she talks about not wanting not wanting to get dragged down. And this is no place for ladies, right? We're getting a whole bunch of sort of implications. She's not coming out and directly saying what's going on here, but she's gesturing towards it. She's implying it. And the way that happens in both languages, it happens in both languages, but it's slightly different. In the Japanese, literally, she talks about how this is no place for ladies. She says this is a place where men come. And she doesn't talk about, "I'm off during hunts." She talks about the shop is closed during hunts, right? So this, in both cases, the most important information, and this is the sign of a good translator, I think, the most important information is that you're getting this connotation that Ariana is engaging in sex work and people think less of her as a result, and she doesn't want to, drag us down as a fellow lady being seen associating with her. Also, potentially interesting that, the Japanese that gets used in the subtitles for dragging us down with her is kegare, which is like ritually impure, which could tie in theoretically with the storyline with the Vile Bloods. And personally, I don't think there's a connection in this particular instance. I think the surrounding context of her line of work and not wanting us to be deemed tainted by the rest of Yharnam society is the more important piece of information to take from that. I think that's the work being done there. But that could be just, my take on the game being wrong. My takes on the game are not guaranteed to be correct or better than anyone else's. I've gotten some very interesting responses from people who are, they disagree with me, and I respect their opinions pretty highly. So, take that for what it's worth. I personally don't think that this is tying in with the Vile Blood storyline. But to be fair, also, I'm also someone who doesn't see the Vile Blood storyline very clearly. It's always been a little bit hazy to me. I've never been sure where it's supposed to go. So, yeah, maybe I'm not the best person to be talking about it, right? I don't know. I figured I'd bring that up, but it is interesting to me just from a translation perspective, the difference there. Another interesting thing that hits me about the translation, I want to go into the settings actually and change this, because I want to highlight the voice actor's delivery. How do I... All right, let's turn off the background stuff. Let's turn off the sound effects. We're going to hear just the voice, and we'll bring the voice up to 10, and I'll hopefully find an even better balance in editing, because this, I think, is interesting.
Oh, thank goodness. You're a hunter, aren't you, dear? Might you know of a safe place? The night is long and I've very little of the incense left. Please, there must be some nice place to run off to.
Do you hear how performative that is? Please, there must be some nice place to run off to, right? Like, and we already know that she's engaged in some sort of unsavory trade, right? Probably sex work, I think, is a very strong implication. It seems like she's trying to sort of use her charms to get us to tell her of a safe place, and so that maybe we can meet her there. Which I think I'm preempting a little bit the end of her dialogue after we send her to Iosefka's clinic and then don't really get to interact with her because of the nature of that particular storyline. But anyway, I think it's interesting how that's happening, because the Japanese, you get a lot of the same idea, a lot of very sort of feminine speech markers that are sort of in the subtitles for those lines. And the English, like if you just listen to the words, and if you've got the ambient noises up, right, that's why I wanted to turn them down, to highlight the voice actress's performance, because you can sort of hear in the delivery the way that she's playing it up, right? And in Japanese, you can read it. You can read it in the delivery because of the way, like, the conventions around, masculine speech versus feminine speech, and the different sort of cultural ways that people approach that information. So it's an interesting case where we're seeing the translators translate the idea of the Japanese, not with words, but with the coaching of the vocal delivery. And I don't know what the vocal recording process was like. Again, I've got to keep giving this disclaimer. I don't actually know if the translators were in the room when they were doing the voice recording. I think they probably were, because, or at the very least, they would have given notes to the voice director. They must have, because otherwise I don't think this voice actor would know necessarily to play up that delivery that, oh, but please, you must know somewhere safe, right? Not exactly that same play up, but you get the idea, right? I think it's an interesting act of translation, and something that this apparently more collaborative process where the English has to go in the Japanese release of the game. I think that we're seeing sort of an interesting side effect of the way that changes the production around, and as a result, we get a slightly different way of approaching the translation than we would if this was just purely text-based after the fact, something like that. And I think that's interesting. Okay, let's send her to Iosefka's clinic and see how she takes the news.
Oh, thank you, dear. Perhaps I'll see you there.
Yeah, there it is. I was preempting her a little bit. Oh well. Also, let's get the ambient sounds back up now that I've made that point. There we go. Still keep the voices a little bit higher than the backgrounds because they tend to be a little quiet otherwise. So I think that's the last we get of her. Let me just make sure.
Oh, thank you, dear.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the last we're going to get from her. But that was a interesting set of dialogues, and now we're going to get another interesting set of dialogues. Several of them. So this might take a little bit.
You're not from around here, are you? Or an outsider who's come to join the hunt? What a pathetic idea. You what? What, you think I'm a beast? Well, maybe I think you're a beast. And step away from my castle.
This character's quite a character, as they say. I do like, I was talking about the translation before. I was delighted by this in Translation Born as well, I remember. I do really like the way that he says, step away from my castle. And the Japanese subtitle is like, be gone, vanish from my house, right? From my home, right? So it's clearly playing on the idea that a man's home is his castle. But the idiom is like so baked into his the way that he speaks that he just says, get away from my castle, right? It's very clear. I think what I like about it is it so encapsulates what a high idea this person has of himself, right? Look at his castle. Hold on. This is not a good, I have to look where I'm going so I don't run into a wall, and we can actually get a look at his castle. It's a corner. It's a tiny little corner of this, admittedly fairly grand Gothic structure. But this part over here, this guy's castle. Yeah, I don't think so. But it is sort of fun. This sort of self-important, very insulting, very sarcastic character who, I don't know about you, but I feel like the English voice delivery sort of gives him a bit of a charming quality. I find it kind of funny. But anyway, let's move on with the dialogues here.
Oh, enough of you. What, you think this is funny? Well, I certainly don't, so be gone with you. I'll have nothing to do with your beast stunts.
Yep, there's more of that contrarian attitude. And if I remember correctly, I think it's going to be this next one. Maybe it's going to be one more. Let's find out.
Well, what's this two-bit nonsense you're peddling? I heard you told that wench about some shelter. Well, she's a damn fool to trust an outsider. And why? Well, her sort's probably just fixing to feed some of your coin.
Yeah, that's the line that I thought it was. And this is an interesting one, because I'm not entirely sure what to do with it. They sort of put in one phrase with the idea of her sort's probably fixing to thieve some of your coin, to get across the derision he feels towards someone in Ariana's profession. And the way that it's another sort of difference for the literal Japanese. The literal Japanese way that he expresses his derision towards her profession is considerably more vulgar. It's something to the effect of her legs must be as loose as her brains, or her brains must be as loose as her legs. I can't remember the exact formulation, but I'll probably have put that on the screen. And it's not it's not pleasant, right? The underlying idea of his, right, feeling a derogatory sense, right, his sort of haughty superiority, him in his castle, right, looking down on Ariana over here in hers, seems pretty equivalent to me. I don't know, maybe that's like inspiring him to more bitterness. I don't know. But the Japanese line is just, I don't know, considerably more coarse to me. And I wonder how much of that is sort of a cultural difference in expression, or sort of a question of how exactly that will translate. Because I do think that, right, the ultimate point gets met one way and the other. But the choices, for instance, with Ariana, where she was saying, what was it? This is no place for ladies, as opposed to this is a place where men come, right? That feels like a fairly equivalent set of exchanged phrases. Whereas this one, I feel like I like this guy a little bit more in English than I like him in Japanese. I feel like in the Japanese, this is a little bit more of a woman-hating scumbag. But again, I'm listening to an English delivery. I'm not listening to a Japanese delivery, and I'm also steeped in North American culture, so as opposed to Japanese culture. And I don't know how much of a role that's playing in what. But anyway, I just thought that's an interesting thing, so brought that up. And but again, I feel like ultimately comes to pretty much the same thing. It's just that the way, the thing that happens along the way is slightly different. So let's continue.
All right. What crafty lies does the outsider have today? You think I'm an easy mark? Yeah? Well, give me your best shot.
All right, and in keeping with this person's contrarian nature, he will go wherever we tell him not to go. This is nothing, right? Tell him nothing. And we could get a little bit more dialogue, but this isn't translation porn. I'm not particularly concerned about that. So we're going to send him to Erden Chapel, and he'll take himself to Iosefka's clinic.
Yeah, sorry. Too sharp for that bollocks. I know a superstition when I hear one. Outsiders. Even their lies are predictable.
I really do think, as miserable as this character is, there is just something funny about the presentation. It's just great. I don't know what it is, but it's charming. Despite being a terrible person. Go figure. All right, we got a couple more doors to knock on here. Let's try this one here.
We've the deepest gratitude for the church and all they do for us. The deepest, widest gratitude. Yes. Yes.
Okay. I realized that the, sound of some sort of knocking, pounding on a table, I don't know exactly what that sound is, but that sound in the background was going to get boosted if I tried to boost that NPC's dialogue, so I turned off the sound effects there. Not sure how successfully smooth that edit was, but that's why it happened, because I didn't want to blast your ears with the sound coming from, I guess, this door? Anyway, I don't mind talking over it because it's not hard for me. I've got my thumb on the entire volume setting of the game, so haha. But anyway, I do think it's interesting that in both cases here, both in the English and in the Japanese, we're getting a sort of strong, obsequious feel to this dialogue. So, unlike the case with Ariana, where we have a difference in what we can read in the subtitles from the Japanese and what we would get if the English were written out, I think in both cases, if you look at the Japanese writing and you look at the English writing, you get the same sort of effect in English and Japanese here. So they're in sync, super obsequious. Oh yeah, no, we love the church. We wouldn't do anything to harm the church, right? That sort of, again, overdone sort of feel. Get the impression that people need to be very careful about what they say in the Cathedral Ward. And let's see what this person is knocking about.
Praise you. Praise the old damn church. And best of luck hunting. Best luck of all.
So same idea. I don't know what he's building a clock tower or something in there. I don't know. He's doing some carpentry. I don't really know what's going on there, but the same sort of obsequious feel that we got before. All right, now we have some more poison knives to throw around. I'm being very careful because if I go too far up here, we're going to get shot at by a whole bunch of enemies. You can see some of them up there, their little patrol. So let's go interrupt their little patrol, shall we? Let's know to run forward and take a little bit of cover before... boy, why am I not getting... I'm used to getting just barraged by gunfire by this point. What's going on? Did I, like, take so long? Ooh. That is a fairly rare dialogue. Death to the minister. Oh, I see. I waited so long that the patrol must have completed that I'm used to having to deal with. Wow. Oh no! My cool follow-up didn't work. How about now? Haha! Yes! Oh, I didn't even need it. I keep trying to use the cool chained R2, and it doesn't exactly work out. This is the barrage of gunfire that I was expecting. Apparently, if you just take a really long time, you don't have to worry about the ambush. You just do a playthrough where you're talking to yourself for an interminable amount of time, and eventually the patrol will sort itself out. That's kind of funny. Very gross wet sounds coming from up there. Who is that? I saw the number 4 there. Is that the level 4 Cold Blood? Please stay in the right category. It's my own fault, but still. It was! Look at that. We got 2 level 4s, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can verify the change goes from Cold Blood Dew droplets at level 3 to thick Cold Blood at level 4. So, there it is. Alright. Well, that was a fun little alleyway with lots of very normal residents. Interesting things going on there. Okay. Don't want to miss anything up here. I think there are some notes. Once again, this is an interesting portion of the game in terms of notes and direction. Okay, was there something? Yeah, that was to go down the ladder. But I'm pretty sure... Here we go. There's a note up here. So let's read one of these notes. Well, you can try gameplay, Matt, but it's not going to go well. I think I'd better edit in my own pre-written take for this one. The password gate guard is a guardian of Bergenworth. Only the aphorism of the Grand Cathedral alone will open that gate. Now, that's a pretty literal take, but the important thing to know is that there is a saying that's been passed down in the Grand Cathedral that serves as a password that some sort of gate guard blocking access to Bergenworth will accept to allow us to pass through. Okay, back to you, gameplay Matt. So, we're going to find out what the adage of the Grand Cathedral is at some point, but it's good to know that the password gate guard is something to do with Bergenworth. We're going to piece this together, and this is what I mean. I don't think there's anything on that ledge, but I don't want to have any doubt. Okay, good. There's nothing there. There are a handful of notes in the Cathedral Ward, and it's one of the places where I think the direction that the game gives you is the most scattered. We've been getting a number of different ways. Oh boy, I didn't think I would die. Well, thankfully, we haven't really gone far. We're just back here. And, actually, yeah, here we go. Because we opened all those gates in the Cathedral Ward, also, I need to remember, not this button, turn on my portable lantern, deal with this enemy. Point at me, will you? Didn't point at me, but you were so slow to attack it didn't matter. Because we opened all those doorways, we now have someone to talk to over here. But we'll get to that in a second, because I want to finish the thought that I was saying. We've gotten direction as to where to go in this game in a number of different ways, and the first one actually was a note. But this particular area right here in the Cathedral Ward, the step after it is, I think it's one of the most scattershot ways they give you information in the entire game, and that's saying something, because they give you information in a lot of scattershot ways. But we're going to have to very carefully piece together some notes. And I mean, the thing is, it's sort of not necessary. If you just go with the flow, I think you end up figuring it out. But it does rely on you sort of running around and exploring more than some of the other ways so far. When Gehrman tells us to go to Old Yharnam, essentially, right, it's pretty pointed, because you find Gehrman in the dream. You're in the dream all the time. Gehrman's right there in the workshop, which is probably one of the most used parts of the hunter's dream if you're going to be doing stuff with your weapons, right? So you're very pointed towards Old Yharnam if you're paying attention. Even if you miss the stuff with, like, Gilbert at the windows because you don't know you can talk to the windows, the direction to go to Old Yharnam, I think, is pretty strong. Whereas the direction of what to do around this point in the game starts to get a little bit more diffuse, and we start to see it in things like those notes. So we're going to sort of keep what that note had to say in mind, but we're going to have to piece together a little bit more information to get the full force of the direction that we're being given. Now, let's talk again with our friend Eileen. It's been a little while since we saw you.
Oh, hello there. Perfect timing. I must warn you not to go near the tomb below Erden Chapel in the Cathedral Ward. Henrik, an old hunter, has gone mad, and he's my mark. Oh, hello there. Perfect timing.
Oh, it's just a repeat?
Henrik, and he...
Oh, okay. I thought she had an additional dialogue after that. Okay, anyway, we've been warned away from... I always think that this visible area over here is the area she's talking about. It's actually not, right? This part over here is the other side of Erden Chapel. It's not the tomb of Erden, the tomb below Erden Chapel in the Cathedral Ward, right? So we'd have to go down the staircase in a straight line if we wanted to get to the tomb of Erden, whereas if we go into Erden Chapel and then take a right, which is what this place is, we would come out in, like, that area. So a little bit of... this just lets you know how terribly weak I am at processing geography. The geography of this world. But we're getting some very interesting information here, and I think does a lot to sort of give you an idea, not just for Eileen's character, but also how Bloodborne presents a lot of its characters. And another one of the themes that I think Bloodborne comes to a lot, and FromSoft games in general come to a lot. I got a comment fairly early on in this series that was talking about how FromSoft games sort of emphasize a duality, and they do it in a lot of different ways. And I think that's very true. I think it's an astute observation, and I think that we can see it right here in Eileen's quest. And sadly, even if I wanted to do the quote-unquote good ending, which I actually love, I think it's probably my favorite quest line in this game, the good ending to Eileen's quest. Even if I wanted to do it, which I wouldn't because I'm doing things differently than Translationborn, and I got it in Translationborn, so I'd be doing it differently. But even if I wanted to do it, in version 1.00, if I recall the old information that I did when I was reading through on differences correctly, then it's just bugged. You can't get it. You can't get the good ending for Eileen's storyline in version 1.00. It's very sad. Fortunately, you don't have to play with the unupdated version of the game anymore. So there's that. They fixed it. But one of the dividing points between the good part of her story and the bad part of her story is sort of what you do with this information here. And this information here, she's telling us an old hunter named Henrik has gone mad. He is her mark, right? She's saying, I'm going to deal with him. And while I'm doing that, that's going to happen in the tomb beneath Erden in the Cathedral Ward. And let's see if I can actually prompt that. Because I think it's more effective if we see it. So I'm going to reload the area. Right, I have reloaded the area. Also, I have put the messengers in top hats because I was getting a little tired of the bloody head bandages. And we're now going to go back down into the Tomb of Erden. And by the way, when we fought Father Gascoigne down here, I was talking about how he has a line, beasts all over the shop. And that is, as I said at the time, just sort of an expression in British English, where all over the shop means, like, all over the place, except actually I got a comment from someone who clarified it's usually done about particularly negative things, right? So it's this bad thing that you don't like is everywhere, tends to be, if I understand correctly, a little bit of the nuance of all over the shop. And, but anyway, the idea that they're all over the shop. If you don't know that that's an English expression, and you think, oh, you know where Father Gascoigne, right? Sounds like he's associated with the church in the past, even though his old rank of father isn't a healing church rank. We know he did work with the healing church as a hunter, and he might reasonably be found in the healing church workshop. That may have been his old base. Where's the healing church workshop? It's up there. You have to ascend Erden Chapel, and then you just go straight across, and it's that whole big building that we were just in, a few episodes back. And so it's very, very close to the Tomb of Erden. So if you don't know that, I had to read the Japanese to figure out, oh, it's just dokomo kashikomo. It's like literally everywhere, all over the place, as opposed to what you get if you don't read the Japanese and you don't speak British English. You won't realize he's not talking about. You might not realize that he's not talking about the Healing Church Workshop. Anyway, I'm demonstrating right now what happened. I don't actually want to kill this guy. I want to just start a fight and run around. I'll probably die if I take 1 or 2 hits from this guy because he's very strong. Very difficult hunter to beat on your own. You can do it, but it's a challenge. I'm just waiting because at some point, here we go. Uh-oh. Things aren't looking so great for you, Eileen. Fortunately, he didn't follow up with a visceral. I don't know how well you can see that, but you get front row seat right now. I don't want to watch too much of this. I got to go back and warp out because I need to fail. I need to not help her. This is the this is the critical point, the critical turning point that I was talking about in her quest line. So she goes to she goes to hunt and kill Henrik, the old hunter, in the Tomb of Erden down there, and she tells us not to go near it, right? So this gets back to that idea of duality. So clearly, and this is even more clear if you continue to engage with Eileen's storyline. Eileen is what's called the Hunter of Hunters, and it's her whole purpose to hunt other hunters. And you remember what I was talking about hunters and designating other things as their prey, right? The idea that once you designate something as prey, you're sort of dehumanizing it, and you're identifying it as something to be put down. Well, and I also talked about the idea of having to sort of walk that line of what needs to be done in the hunt versus what's cruel, what's overly sentimental, what's practical. We have to sort of engage with these ideas, where we draw the line, what the hard truths are, what's gone too far, where's the point where we start tipping into going mad, blood drunk, and it can be very difficult to determine. And I think we can see this with the way that Eileen, she's one of the first NPCs that we can see out in the world. She greets us, she says, oh, here you are to welcome the new hunter. Here, have some of this stuff. She gives us some bold hunter's marks, she gives us a gesture, she's very welcoming, and she seems nice and kind. Turns out, her whole point is to kill hunters who've gone blood drunk, who've lost it. They've failed to hold that line properly, and they're now essentially turning into beasts, and she has to then dispose of them, right? And her current mark is Henrik the Old Hunter. But she's also welcoming and greeting the other hunters, right? So you can see this inherent tension of having to keep an eye on people, help them out, also be paranoid about people going drunk with blood and becoming her targets, and having to go with her line of work. And I think if we eventually carry on with this line, you can see there's sort of a positive spin you can put on it. But the strain, like we're talking about people having, like, not being able to maintain that line between violence and blood drunk in their work as hunters. The line for Eileen has to be crazy difficult to maintain, because not only is she managing that herself, she's also determining that for other hunters and watching as everyone around her is slowly going mad. And the way that you can get the good ending in her quest line is to intervene in her quest, right? It's a moment where you disobey what she tells you to do, but in doing so, you offer her human support in a world where it otherwise would feel like she's alone, right? Because if you go and you help her in that fight, it shows her that she's not the only sane one in a world of mad hunters, right? And you can sort of see her going into this direction when she first sees us. She tells us they're all flesh-hungry beasts now, right? There's no humans left. Don't worry about killing what you see here. So you can get some indications of the isolated world that she's living in, not just because of the night of the hunt that it is, which is especially bad, but also because of her line of work and that constant, like, push and pull, that dichotomy that she's struggling with, that sort of duality both in herself and in the world around her and all that. We can help offset that by showing her that, we're with her. And I think that's very interesting as a turning point in her quest line and as a way of sort of expressing that through gameplay. That's something else that I really like, because there are a lot of games where you could do that with a dialogue choice, right? Where she would tell you, oh, don't go there. And you would be like, no, I'll be there for sure, right? You get a little response and you could say that. And there's nothing wrong with those sorts of games. I tend to like them, actually. But it's a different sort of game. And I like the way that Bloodborne sort of sets this up for you. And it's up to you what to do with the information. They give you the information, and then you can choose how to interact with it. You can take Eileen at her word, or you can say, you know what, no, you helped me, I want to help you out. I want to help deal with Henrik. And you indicate what you want to do by acting, and the actions that you take are more important, they're more impactful than any words that you could give her. I mean, there's no dialogue option. Like, they could have put in a sort of meaningless dialogue option if they really wanted to do that, where they say, oh, got it, or no, I'm going to help you, right? They could give you the dialogue, and then that could not matter, and then it all depends on what you do. If they wanted to make the point that way, I don't think they needed to. I think it works out beautifully the way that they did it, and I think that's something that is just extremely cool. But anyway, I realize I haven't gotten my blood echoes back, and we're still a little bit short in terms of exploring the Cathedral Ward, but I've been going for a long time. We've talked to a lot of NPCs, so I think this is a pretty good point to call the episode for the day. Thank you all very much for watching along with me. I hope you've been having fun. I've been having fun making this playthrough and having people follow along with me, offer their thoughts on everything. It's been an amazing experience, so it's not over. It's not over. I'm just calling an end to my hunt for the evening, and I wish all of you good hunting.